ASML recently published their new 2022 annual report showcasing their numbers for the fiscal year 2022, which ended on December 31st. In this video, we're gonna have a quick look over at their financials for the year 2022, see exactly what they did for the past year, and see what we can expect here into the future. So, looking at their statement of comprehensive income, we notice here that they have increased their revenue from 18.6 billion all the way to 21.2. Now, of course, I do think it's important to know that currently with the economic climate in the world in 2022 and 2023, AI is of course taking a massive front role of what we can expect here in the future. And all those chips on which AI is based are made by Nvidia or AMD, and all the machines that make these chips for Nvidia and AMD are of course made by ASML. So I think considering this, I think ASML will have a very strong future based on the current trend that we're seeing here with ChatGPT or with Google's Bard. We see their gross profit has increased by about 900 million, which is not that much considering their previous growth. I think 2022 was definitely a more stagnant year for them. So what I did is I took all the numbers here from their annual report and put them in my new 2022 ASML spreadsheet. And what we can see here is that their revenue has increased by 13%, which is nothing to sneeze at all. I think it's about in line with their overall increases for the past 10 years. On average, it's been 15%. Last year, it's been 13%. But what's important to note here is that their EBITDA, so their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, has kind of flatlined here in 2022 because they had a lot of increased costs here in 2022. They had additional research and development costs, more material costs, more employee costs. So this very much weighed down their earnings for 2022. But we did see them steadily increase their revenue. So I do expect their earnings to follow, if not this year, then maybe in the next one. Looking at that debt level, we can see that they've actually reduced their debt on the balance sheet, which is very nice to see. There's no risk of bankruptcy for ASML whatsoever. They are very unleveraged as a company. They also have a bit more excess cash on their balance sheet to buffer any potential blow. So honest to God, there is no chance, no risk of bankruptcy. And if ASML wants to expand, and I'm not saying they're not currently expanding because they are, but if they want to, they can take on quite some debt here to really accelerate their expansion if they deem that necessary. Market cap has decreased since 2021, enterprise value has decreased, EV/EBITDA ratio has come down from 37 times to 29 times, which is still above the average 10-year period, but I do think it's getting towards the more reasonable levels at this point, considering the massive growth that we see ASML have, and considering the position that ASML will play in the future AI industry. Like I mentioned, their debt level is basically unleveraged. Cash flow from operation here has increased by a proper, let's say 20% here in 2022, which is a contrast here with the EBITDA. Usually you want to see these two grow in line. EBITDA is mostly seen as a proxy kind of for cash flow. It's not entirely, of course, there's still some accounting involved in that, but it's seen as a bit of a proxy for cash flow. So it is a bit curious to see EBITDA and cash flow numbers differ a little bit. We did see a proper growth here in line with the previous growth. We also saw that capital expenditure increase, and of course capital expenditure does not include research and development. Research and development is all included into their earnings statement already, so it's not a part of the cash flow from operation. Well, it's a part of the cash flow from operations, but it's not expensed with the capital expenditure. It's included in this number. Capital expenditure has increased though by 14% because, like I mentioned, they have been increasing the operations for the last year. Free cash flow has also increased by a proper 20-ish%. The amount of shares outstanding, and I think this is very interesting and very attractive as an investor, because if I look over here at their share buyback program, we can see that they have been consistently buying back shares with a consistently increasing budget. In 2018, they bought back a total of 7 billion worth of shares, and in 2022, this has risen all the way to 21.8 billion. We see a massive share buyback program here between 2020 and 2021, where they basically bought back 9 billion worth of stock. And this is also what we see here when we look at their shares outstanding. We notice that in 2021, 2022, they have drastically increased their shares outstanding by about 2% here for the last 2 years and about 1% for the overall 10-year trend line. I do expect them to keep on buying back shares, as it is a very attractive way to reward shareholders for holding the stock. Free cash flow per share has therefore been increasing because of course their free cash flow has increased, and at the same time the amount of shares outstanding have decreased, basically giving you a double whammy when it comes to free cash flow per share returns. Price per share on the open market for the past 10 years has started at around 70 euros, and in 2022 it was 561. The year prior it was 709. The price has come down quite a bit here on December 31st, 2022, and we do see, if we currently look at the market, that their share price has actually gone up quite a bit again. So this was definitely a very low number. 561 is already increased by about 100 euros. So looking at their history now, because we've projected ASML before, because I have projected ASML with their 2021 earnings, but I'm going to give a new projection here for the 2022 numbers, because on average we see EBITDA grow by about 17% every single year. I'm going to say for the next 4 years, because we are currently in this AI boom territory, I expect them to keep on growing their earnings by about this number. I'm going to give them 14% for the first 4 years, and then I'm going to reduce that to 12% for the next 5 years, and I'm going to reduce it to 10% for the last year. I'm also going to attach a market multiple of 22 times EBITDA. Last time when I evaluated ASML, I gave them a 20 times ratio, but I do think that's probably a bit on the low end of things, and I do expect them to be a bit higher because of course how important they are in the global economy. In the last 4 years, they've definitely been well above the 25 times, so I think 22 is actually a very conservative number, and I actually expect them to outperform this multiple. I expect them to score way higher, but this is my conservative estimate here for the future. This gives me a market cap of about $540 billion, divide by the amount of shares outstanding, and I'm assuming that the amount of shares outstanding remain the same. This gives me a stock price in 10 years, so in 2032, of about 1,358 euros. Looking at the free cash flow, I'm going to do a very similar thing, but I do think it's fair to say that their free cash flow has been increasing faster than their earnings has. So I'm going to grow their free cash flow a little bit faster, not that much faster, but a little bit faster than their EBITDA. I'm going to grow it by 16% here for the first 4 years, then 13% for the 5 years after, and 11% for the final year. I'm going to attach a yield of 3.5%, which is well above their historic yield. Historically, they've been around 3%. I'm going to give them 3.5 because, of course, like I mentioned, I am more conservative. If you want to know exactly what happens the moment I give them maybe more accurate numbers instead of conservative numbers, we can see that the share price increased by a few hundred euros. But I'm going to be a bit more conservative still for my estimate, like I always am. So I'm going to keep this at 22 times and the yield at 3.5%. This gives me a share price in 2032 of 1,915 euros. Currently on the open market, I can buy as many shares as I want of ASML for 668 euros. If I take both my projections, so the enterprise value as well as the free cash flow, I get an average share price on the open market itself of 1,636 euros. This gives me a compounding annual growth rate on the stock market alone, on the share price alone, of 9.4%. But the moment I include the free cash flow that I expect to be receiving here for the next 10 years as projected in our free cash flow model, I expect an internal rate of return, an IRR, of about 15.1%. And this is a number that outperforms the overall indexes. On average, I always say the stock market returns about 10% IRR. So I think compared to the overall market, I expect ASML to outperform the overall market. So let's see what happens if the price goes up or comes down a little bit. So the moment that the price goes down again to that middle 500 range, I expect an IRR of 19%, as seen at December 31st, 2022. I think it was an amazing buying opportunity, and I think even right now ASML is still relatively attractive, especially considering all the tailwinds that ASML is going to be experiencing because of the AI and automation boom here. So yeah, this was my quick update here on ASML. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio!